the first entry for a lot of folks to get into the outdoors. I mean, this was their
Yeah.
first dipping their toe in from the boutique hotels in the urban centers they might have gotten. I'm taking over for Jenny here, but that was my spiel. That's what I heard.
Yeah. Yep, that's correct. Yeah, it's funny when you look at our market a little bit. We've got a lot of couples or partners that camp, and it's interesting because one will want to go to Terramore because they grew up camping and they want to have an outdoor experience again, and the other partner is like, absolutely not, I'm not camping. And so this is like the perfect mesh for that couple, because they both get to have the experience that they're looking for. And when they leave, the partner who is like, I'll never camp, is all about it, and they're coming back and they want to do it again. So it's really cool to see people who don't have that outdoor experience having that experience.
So what's the customer profile look like? Is it skew younger, more educated, higher income, family?
Yeah. So our average age is about 44. So a lot of families come and camp with or glamp or stay with us. They are higher educated. So we have a lot of doctors and lawyers, a lot of professors. Part of that is, where we're based, being so close to Boston and the bigger cities. Higher income level will come and stay with us. And in a lot of families, during peak season, about 60% of our guest profile are families. But then again, in the shoulder season is when we see a lot of the retirees and younger couples coming.
So Ben, I don't know if you've got any pictures of Terramore available up there that we could flip up, but it would. I was just going to ask Jenny about the structures themselves that the KOA landed on. Yeah. I know they're very consistent. And how many are out there, and what does the facility look like as far as what people are going to be glamping in?
Yeah, so we have 64 canvas style tents. Of those, 60 of them have in-suite bathrooms. So there's 4 that we call more rustic, and those ones don't have bathrooms inside of the tent, but they do have their own private bathroom experience in a bathhouse with their own keyed entry. And then the other ones, like I said, they all have in-suite bathrooms. Our 2-person tent, we call it Bayberry, is beautiful. It's got a walk-in shower where you could probably fit 5 people in the shower if you wanted to. They all have a very nice, large king style bed. There's that beautiful shower. Our 5-person has a additional bedroom that has a twin bed in it with a double on the bottom and a twin on the top. And they all have their own private fire experience. So it really provides some great opportunities for them to be outside. Because it is Maine and it can be buggy, we also have mosquito nets for all of our tents, so they can still sit outside on their patio and enjoy the outdoor scenery.
When you guys were designing this park, the rumor mill gets going, and there's rumors, you guys are going to be opening more locations here soon, or going to be unveiling some new locations. But I guess when you guys were designing this resort, was that thought in mind? And is there like some different aspects of this resort that are kind of standardized for like if you wanted to open up more resorts, or is each resort going to kind of have its own flavor, I guess?
Yeah, so the idea was always that if this was successful, we definitely wanted to add more locations, and so we're working through that now, and we'll hopefully have some announcements of some upcoming new Terramore locations here soon. And most of them, there are some key elements that we will have at every location. We'll have a lodge with a restaurant and bar at every location. The fire experiences, as long as there's not any major fire restrictions, we want to have fire experiences at each of our accommodations. We'll always try to have a pool. So there's different elements that will definitely carry over, but they'll look different. So they'll look like they actually belong within the local area or community. So as you can see, our lodge here in Acadia is really designed to kind of mimic a national park lodge. We used locally milled white pine and hemlock wood from Maine. And we'll really try to take that thought of bringing like all local, that local look and feel and experience to every location. So they won't all look the same, but they'll have a lot of the same elements.
So talk about the importance of the food aspect out there.
Yeah, it's, having food at our resort is proven to be really successful. In fact, it's one of the things that we probably learned a little bit about when we were building this resort. We didn't really build for a large restaurant because we assumed, being so close to Bar Harbor and so many great restaurants, that our guests would want to go out to eat at those locations. But really what we're finding is, our guest stays usually about 3 nights with us, and usually about 2 nights they're eating in the lodge. Because by the time they get back, they're so tired, they don't want to leave again. It's comfortable there for them. And we have some really great food options. It's easy. And so we've had to actually expand our kitchen shortly after opening to be able to offer the kind of menu items that the guests expected. And as we grow, we're definitely taking into account to add more seating, because we are finding, again, that guests, once they get back to the resort, they don't want to leave it.
Yeah, I mean, just the pictures you've shown there, it's a beautiful location. I've been to Bar Harbor, and I mean, you can't really go wrong going to Bar Harbor, except if you go in the middle of winter, unless you like snow, which I don't like snow, but there's a lot of snow. But it's just a beautiful area, and you guys offer a lot at the resort. I guess, is the resort designed to keep people at the resort, or is it designed to just, people go out and explore and come back and have all these amenities and relax at the resort when they get back?
Yeah, it's really designed to get people out and exploring the local area. So if you were to walk through Terramore like at 2:00 in the afternoon, it would be pretty quiet. There's not a lot of people on site, mostly staff. Some families will stick around on one of the days and swim or something, but it's usually pretty quiet because we really promote getting out and seeing and experiencing the local area, whether that's visiting a national park or going into the communities, or giving some restaurant and experience recommendations. We work with local tour operators and guides to help get our guest itineraries together of having those really unique local experiences. But on the other side is when they come back in, we do bring in local musicians for evening music. We'll bring in local breweries for beer tastings. We just started a really fun event weekly called Pints for a Purpose. Every Thursday. Not Mike.
Me.
Where we'll bring in local experts and nonprofits, and they'll talk about the island there on MDI, and then every beer pint purchase, $1 of that goes to Friends of Acadia, which is an organization we support.
Yeah. I guess, when you look for potential, if you look for potential locations, new locations, I guess, what are you looking for in those locations? Is it going to be kind of like a Bar Harbor setting where you want a lot of natural stuff around for people to do? Is that kind of the places that you would look for expansion, I guess?
Yeah. We definitely want to be in a place that has opportunities and attractions for guests in more of a natural sense. We probably won't build a Terramore next to a big amusement park. But that doesn't mean that we're going to restrict ourselves to only being near national parks either. So we want to make sure that we've got outdoor experiences, but also just really fun activities and experiences for people, such as like wine tasting or something, where it drives people there and it gets them to experience the local area without staying on our site every day.
So what kind of employee are you looking for again, I think this is a little bit different than staffing up a campground. Mm-hmm. You've got to have a little bit more professional hospitality staff there. Are you looking for that sort of experience? Mm-hmm. Are they hotel people that you're getting to run these places?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we brought on a general manager about halfway through the season last year who came to us from the hotel background, which is different than what you would see at a traditional campground. and he's been doing fantastic at the resort. Really, we just are looking for people. It's a mix. We want people that have a true passion for and love for the outdoors. Most of our staff at Terramore, on their days off, they're exploring Acadia, or they're driving up to Baxter State Park. So they're having those experiences too, because if they have a passion for it, then they're going to show that passion share that passion with our guests. We do have several that have worked in hotels or hospitality before, especially in our food and beverage, but that's not a requirement. Mainly, we just are looking for those individuals that are people persons, and they have a love for the outdoors.
And I know it's pretty early, pretty early in the game here for Terramore, but is there any chance down the road that because KOA is so good at franchising, that this could be a franchise?
Yeah, there really hasn't been much discussion about franchising it. I think we're still so early in the game. Not that it would never happen. It's just not a conversation we're having right now.
Yeah. Through when I talk with park owners, and you're on the Facebook forums and see them, they always talk about like demanding campers. The guests are so demanding, and throughout the hospitality industry, I think we're seeing that. I guess, is that something you've noticed at Terramore, that the guests come in with really high expectations, and you have to have the employees trained to be able to handle those high expectations, I guess?
Yeah, I think guests have high expectations, especially when they're doing something they haven't ever done before. There's a lot of questions that they want answered. So a lot of, it's funny, our general manager, who I just mentioned, coming from the hotel world, one of his biggest comments is he can't get off the phone with guests because they just want to chat and they ask questions, and, they're really personable because they want to make sure this is the experience that they're expecting. But as far as, being, having outrageous expectations, we don't really see that at Terramore. Our guests are really happy to be there. I think a lot of that, though, is because we learned pretty quickly we needed to up our game in pre-arrival communication. And so we send out a lot of communication prior to their stay there, and then we stay in contact with them through text messaging while they're there as well. So we've found that that's alleviated a lot of maybe misconceptions of what their trip will be like, or concerns or nerves about them staying with us.
Looking at Terramore, is there plans to expand the resort there in Bar Harbor? Do you have room to expand anymore?
We don't really have a ton of space to expand. Our location, there's a lot of wetlands on the property that we own there, and so there's not a ton of room for expansion within that property. And it might not make sense either for that property to expand, just as far as the operational team goes there. So there may be instances where we can add 1 or 2 tents, but it wouldn't be anything more than that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I think Mike and I always talk about permitting and zoning, or we've talked a lot about it recently, because the industry, when these new developments come in, it can just be difficult to get the zoning and permitting done. I guess, what was that like? I don't know if you were there for Terramore when they were doing the zoning and permitting for the resort. I guess, what's the reaction been like from the neighbors of the resort? Are they, I guess, yeah, what's the reaction been like from the neighbors?
So I wasn't involved with Terramore from the very beginning, but I have been involved in a lot of permitting and zoning discussions with Terramore as we've added things like employee housing and laundry buildings, wellness tents. So, as far as neighbors go, we haven't had any complaints from neighbors or run-ins from neighbors where they've expressed any negative feelings with us being there. We've got a pretty strict noise ordinance that we follow, and then of course we follow all of the nice guy lighting guidelines, and so we try to be good neighbors as much as possible. And as far as the city goes, there's always, I think, zoning and permitting is
Yeah.
It's tough for every operator. And we definitely have ran into some learnings building this resort compared to being, a campground, and things that you have to do a little bit differently.
Yeah, and you got to remember that it was a campground. It was a operating KOA right up until they pulled it off to do the construction work. So a lot of that infrastructure and everything else was already permitted in.
Yep. Yeah, and that's what we're finding as we are looking to expand is it's a lot easier finding a campground and keeping those permits and zones than it would be from broadly under the ground up.
So any learnings out there from the Terramore operation that have been passed down to a KOA franchisee that's dipping their toes into glamping and putting a few facilities on their parks? Is there any sharing going on?
Yeah, not a ton. There's definitely some sharing going on within our Bar Harbor KOA campground and our Terramore, just as far as like guest experience and that kind of stuff goes. But because it is so different than a campground, there's not a ton of learnings or I guess shared knowledge that we can pass on back and forth because the clientele is different. One of the things that we did that we learned from pretty quickly when we first opened, we managed it very much like a campground. And so we were charging for things like firewood and ice and, those major things that campgrounds see a lot of income come from. But once you factor in how much somebody's staying for one night, they don't want to pay $6 for firewood, nor should they really. So there's a little bit of difference there. And that's something that we can share and we have shared with our campground operators is if you do create a glamping experience, you really have to factor in if you're going to charge a lot more, what the amenities for that experience is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've never been glamping, I guess, like the tent, areas like what you have or the different lodging units. I mean, it's definitely a different experience, and learning how to cater to those people, it must be quite a bit. It must be quite a change for RV park and campground owners who are trying to implement glamping in their parks. So,
I know that KOA's model really. They try to put their guests together a lot. There's group fire experiences. Yeah. There's all these events that happen on a campground to bring them together. Is it different at Terramore? Is it more of a singular experience than a campground would be?
Yeah, that's a good question. We see a lot of groups come to Terramore. We have a lot of like 40th birthday parties or girls' weekends, bachelorette parties, that kind of thing. And so we do get a lot of requests to put tents next to one another. But all of our tents are spaced a minimum of 50 feet from one another. We're trying to even broaden that so you have more of a private experience. As we look to grow, there's been some discussions on do we create like a group area? But I think we do want to keep it unique and open. There might be opportunities where we can create like a family area with a couple tents closer together, but we don't want to really divide the resort too much into a group chunk or like a family and singles area. It's a resort for everyone.
Which company produces your tents? I guess, do you know the company that makes the tents?
Yep. Our tents at Terramore are from Tent Masters.
Okay. Was there quite a lengthy process to decide on which tent manufacturer to go with?
Yeah, there, and again, I wasn't involved in the very beginning process of that, but we've since worked with them to negotiate, working with them for future locations. And every time you look, towards the future, you really have to look at every option out there and what kind of accommodation will fit for what certain area. There's probably areas we'll go into eventually that a canvas tent might not make the most sense. And so we're not, we won't only have canvas tents. And so with that, there's always processes to look for what the best available accommodation structure is for those locations.
What's the process like at the end of the season? Because you guys close mid-October, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the process like at the end of the season as you get the resort ready for winter, I guess?
Yeah. The nice thing about Tent Masters is the tents that we have can withstand snow. So we can actually keep all of our structures up year round. However, we do winterize them. So we take out a lot of the furnishings, turn the water off. We position the beds in a way that they won't sustain any damage. And then rodent proof everything, because we found after our first year we had a little bit of a rodent issue in the wintertime. But other than that, it's been a pretty easy process.
The rodents will find anywhere to go. So, so is the canvas holds up pretty well, even after the winter, I guess?
Yep. Yeah. There's a couple steps that we take where we loosen the roofs. So there's not a ton of stretching. And then we have a full-time maintenance team that stays year round. And they'll go in and push the snow off if we have heavy snowfall days.
Okay. So what does the staffing of the park look like now?
Yeah. So we have about 30 employees during season. And we have on-site employee housing for our staff. That's something that we found, again, when you talk about, what's different between a standard campground and Terramore is we don't necessarily have work campers, so we don't have RV hookup spots for our workforce. We have more like a dormitory style housing unit, because a lot of our staff is a little bit younger than the work camper workforce that KOA typically uses. We're using college students and individuals who are more seasonally based. They'll work at Terramore and then they'll go work at a ski resort in the wintertime. So we have about 30, and of those, about 6 of them are in a management role. So food and beverage, housekeeping, maintenance, our general manager, supervisory positions throughout this season. So we have 4, I think, salary positions that stay with us year round.
Okay. What's the bookings look like for this year so far? Have you guys been pretty much booked solid for the entire year?
Yeah, it's been busy. May was a little bit slower for us. Just the weather in Maine this year was pretty chilly up until the moment we opened, actually chilly through the first part of the month. So it was a little bit quiet this May. But yeah, we're pretty packed full here in the next couple months, and looking forward to a really busy fall as well.
Yeah, and fall in Maine is just beautiful. So especially when the trees start to change colors, it's just a beautiful time to be in Maine. So,
are the units heated, air conditioned? What's the climate control like in the tents?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have we don't have AC or on wall heating or cooling units. We do have a in-room ceiling fan, and then we have a portable heater that can be moved about inside the tent, so that it can get chilly, but it's pretty comfortable. We have wool blankets and Pendleton blankets and lots of ways to stay warm.
But if it gets up to 105 degrees, then I suppose the lodge gets real busy.
It does, yes. So luckily, it doesn't get up to 105 degrees in Maine very often.
So what are some of the other activities? I know I saw a pool earlier, and you guys are pet friendly, right? At the resort? Okay.
Yeah.
And then it looks like you guys do like art classes and different things as well.
Yeah, we do on-site activities. We've been doing some rock painting with some of the kids that are there, which has been really fun. And then we have stargazing. So we bring in a local stargazing expert to do stargazing with our guests about 4 times a month. We have a night ecology tour. We have a bird watching tour in the morning. We do have a pool. We have cornhole on site that guests can play. And then within the lodge, we have a lot of like board games and card games and stuff. So if the weather is not so nice, they can come in. Families will come into the lodge and play games.
So for the pet owners out there, any desires to leave their pet as they're out exploring the park, or do they always take their pets with them?
Yeah, so dogs aren't allowed to be in a tent on their own. Luckily, Bar Harbor is a pretty dog-friendly place, but as you mentioned, a lot of times there's trails that dogs can't go on in the park, and so we've tried to partner with the kennel boarding place that was located just down the road, where guests could take their dog if they wanted to go do a day hike or whatnot in Acadia.
Yeah. I mean, I guess. Man, I lost my train of thought again. Why does that happen?
Do you have some place where Ben could drop off his plethora of kids?
Yeah.
Do not.
Yeah.
You can the pool, but you'll have to stay in there with them.
The problem with glamping for me is if I want to go glamping, I have to rent like 3 units because there's too many people. I just can't fit them all in one unit. So, I go tent camping. It's just not quite as fancy as what you got at Terramore.
Yeah.
So, but it sounds like everything's going really well at Terramore. I guess, looking to the future, you're just going to keep looking for ways to grow, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think, we're pretty excited about this brand model that we've created, and our guests are excited for new locations. I can't tell you how many times a guest will ask where the next one is so they can start planning. Here's to the future. Hopefully we'll get some more going.
Well, Greg Emmert said, love all the conservation-based activities. Most parks resorts don't take advantage of the low cost and high guest satisfaction to these. So, which is true. I know Greg used to do a lot of conservation activities, I believe, when his family owned that KOA in Ohio, if I remember correctly. But he did a lot of conservation activities. You mentioned the night sky. So you guys do like night sky stuff, right? Is that the light you were talking about earlier?
So there's a night sky ordinance that we follow. We have to follow it in Bar Harbor, but as we look at growing, we'll follow it at all of our locations. We have a partnership with Celestron Telescopes, and so we have at our gear lending station, guests can take a telescope out into their tent and look at the sky, either on their own, or they can join our expert stargazing guide and walk through the night skies of Acadia with him.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about, we've written some stories on stargazing. It's just amazing. I think a lot more campground owners, glamping park owners could definitely take advantage of the night sky and do more programs like that. So people are really interested in it.
So Jenny, how important is the green aspect of Terramore to your guests? I mean, I'm sure that with the group you're trying to appeal to, green's got to be top of mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really important. We're constantly trying to be green because it's the right thing to do for our brand and just in general. But our guests are also holding our feet to the fire to do it too. So, we try to do things like we have our recycling. We use as many local ingredients in our restaurant as possible. We actually have an herb garden on site where we pull a lot of those ingredients for our restaurant. And then all of our to-go cups, like coffee cups and everything, those are all decombustible material. And so trying to do like the little things, it's all the little things adding up that really make the difference when you think about being green. So.
Yeah, definitely. And this is probably the only time somebody will say this about me. You got a good memory. So there you go. That doesn't happen a lot. But anyways, well, I think that's about, we aren't going to drill you with any more questions, Jenny. So thank you for being generous with your time and being willing to come on. And we hope that things continue to go well for Terramore as you look to the future. And we're excited to hear about whatever plans you have coming down the road. So
yeah, well, thanks for having me. I enjoyed the discussion. So.
Can't wait for the next one.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back next week. So have a great week.
Bye, everybody.